Hi, my name is Andrea Holm. I am the Senior Program Coordinator at the Writing Skills Improvement Program at the University of Arizona. I am also an adjunct professor there in the Department of Mexican American Studies. Today I'm going to speak with you about my presentation, Safe Spaces to Write, Facilitated Writing Groups for Women of Color Graduate Students. I want to thank you for visiting my workshop today. Originally, this presentation was designed as a workshop with several individual, small group, and large group discussion activities. But when we made the transition to the online format, I decided that it would be more effective to scale it down a little bit, and it will now be more presentation style, though there will still be some opportunities for individual writing. And I also understand that the chat option will be open, so if you would like to enter questions for others to respond to and so forth, that is certainly welcome, and I'll also check into those when I'm able to. Okay, so I do hope that you have some writing utensils available to you, either a computer or pen and paper. We're not going to do extensive writing activities, but there will be a couple of opportunities for you to take some notes. So today my goal is to flesh out this question: how can peer tutoring groups serve as safe spaces that facilitate skill building and support for graduate students, and particularly graduate students of color, as they review, revise, and write? Okay. I will be discussing the tutoring group and writing group experiences that I have with my institution. So our regular tutoring groups, our Women of Coloring writing group, and our People of Color writing groups. But I'd like to start you with an activity. So if you'll just take out a pen and paper or make room on your computer to take a few notes and to think about these questions. Number one, what do you think are the most important things to provide in a tutoring or a writing group? Number two, what do you think students are seeking? And number three, how can a group serve as a safe space for students? Okay, so I'm actually going to give us some time to answer those questions. So I'll just give us about 2 minutes. We'll just take about another 30 seconds. Okay, so go ahead and wrap up your thoughts there. And again, I realize that I just gave you a couple of minutes to tackle these very broad questions that could certainly be answered with some depth. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to start thinking about these ideas. Because I'm kind of assuming that everybody who's here is really interested in either joining or starting a writing group for students. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about the University of Arizona, where my program is housed. The University of Arizona is a Research One institution. We are a land-grant institution, and we are located in Tucson, which is about 90 minutes north of the US-Mexico border. As a land-grant institution, it's part of our mission to provide educational access to the community. And we are driven by that mission in every aspect of what we do. The University of Arizona has also recently gained status as a Hispanic Serving Institute, which means that 25% of the students that attend the University of Arizona identify as Hispanic. With that status comes the responsibility of maintaining recruitment and retention services geared towards Hispanic student populations. At the U of A, the graduate student population is around 10,000, and about 32% of that number of students are students of color. So just over 3,000 students of color in graduate programs. At the U of A, students of color are identified as African American, Native American, Alaskan or Hawaiian, Asian American, and Hispanic American. There is also a category for students who may identify as multiracial or multi-ethnic. Within the institution, the Writing Skills Improvement Program is a small program that's been on campus for about 40 years. We are currently housed under the College of Humanities. The College of Humanities is on our campus, includes programs such as foreign languages such as Spanish and Portuguese, French, German. We also have language services programs such as the Center for English as a Second Language and critical languages, as well as the translation services. But the Writing Skills Improvement Program is independent in the sense that we receive our primary funding from the state of Arizona and from self-generated funds. Our mission is to support writers, both emerging and established writers, and we work with students from multiple levels. So that includes high school students, undergraduate students, and graduate students. We also work with K-12 teachers, with university professors, and with research faculty. And then we also work with community members in general. We provide our services both in person and online. Certainly right now during the COVID crisis, we have moved our services completely online. Those services include writing tutoring, workshops, writing institutes, editing, and our job market prep services. The members of our staff are all professional teachers, writers, and editors. We all have advanced degrees, master's degrees, or doctoral degrees. And this is probably the key component that sets us apart from most writing support services in higher ed. You may be familiar with the writing centers on your campus, and most of those writing centers follow a model of peer-to-peer tutoring. So they will have undergraduate students who have been trained as peer tutors. Sometimes there will be graduate students trained as peer tutors, and there may be one or two staff members who do tutoring or who at least facilitate and direct those programs. Writing skills, we don't have the peer-to-peer structure. All of our staff members are professional teachers and tutors and editors. At Writing Skills, we recognized that there was a need for that peer-to-peer interaction, and we decided to pilot facilitated peer tutoring groups, or we call them small groups, specifically for graduate students. So as part of our services, what we provide to students before the small groups was individual tutoring. So that means that a graduate student would make an appointment with me and we would have a 50-minute session to review their writing. What we were finding is that graduate students were also hungry for the experience of working with other students at their same level with their peers to experience some sense of writing community, some peer feedback, and not necessarily in relation to content development, but specifically to writing development. So the facilitated peer tutoring groups are offered in 2-hour sessions, and the groups meet once every other week. They can meet in person or online or a combination of both. And students are grouped together based on their needs, their interests, and their availability. So in this picture, we have a group of students who were all graduate students at the PhD level in Spanish and Portuguese. They came together as a group and asked for a group to be facilitated for them. So they came to us with an express need. Sometimes we'll have students individually email and ask to be placed in a group. And so we'll just try to match them with a group that meets some of those common traits. Perhaps all of the students are interested in learning more about grammar and organization, or they lack confidence and they're looking to work with others who may be able to help them work through those issues. And oftentimes students express the need for writing time. And so we do offer facilitated writing time through most of our groups. In the tutoring groups, we focus on providing facilitated peer feedback. And so what that means is we offer an initial training for all of the group members in non-evaluative peer review. Non-evaluative peer review includes any type of peer review that is focused not on judging the writing, for judging the quality of writing, but instead on noticing patterns in the writing and helping the writer to gain a greater sense of audience awareness while building tools to help them address problems in their writing. The facilitator, the tutor, helps prepare students to offer that type of feedback. So for example, one of our techniques is to do pointing and centering. This is a technique that comes from the pedagogy of writing across the curriculum. And in pointing and centering, the first step is that one writer will read an excerpt of their writing. The other members of the group will take note of words that stood out to them. When the writer is done reading, the group members read those words back to the writer, and that helps the student get an understanding of what words affected the audience. Now, what this helps the writer gain awareness in is, again, what stands out to the audience, but helps them to see if that actually matches what their original intent was. So for example, if the writer's intent was that the paragraph would discuss the chemical reaction between A and B, but the audience members heard instead a discussion about element C, then the writer understands that there's something happening in that paragraph that needs to be adjusted. The next step of the non-evaluative pointing and centering is centering. And in that process, the writer will read that same paragraph again, but this time students are going to focus a little bit more in depth on their feedback. So we ask them to notice claims, to notice gaps, and to push themselves to ask questions about the expression and the content. And again, all of this is to help with audience awareness. Now, that's how we start our peer tutoring or our peer feedback in the facilitated groups. And once students have been working together for a couple of cycles, then they begin to expand their communication and their ability to provide feedback. But what we aim for is helping students to understand that what we aim for is to help students understand that their writing is a relationship between themselves as the researcher writer and their audience. And they need to rely on how their audience is receiving their writing in order to help them best develop their expression. And once we can start to recognize the patterns in our writing, to understand where we tend to leave gaps and questions unanswered, then we can start addressing at an instructional level how to help remedy those issues. In this picture, the group is celebrating Lumi's successful proposal defense. Okay, so within these groups, again, the focus tends to be on the development of organization, grammar, style, and expression. So it's very centered on the writing and the writing patterns. Since we piloted the program in 2013, we've had a steady increase in the requests for groups. We have 5 regular tutors in our program, our staff members, and each of us has a minimum of 3 groups. Some of us have upwards of 8, and that would actually be me. So we continue to see the increased demand for these groups, and yeah, we average about 20 groups per semester. In this picture, you see Miguel and Fayez, and they are meeting with their writing tutor, Leslie DuPont. Miguel and Fayez were in ethnic musicology, and interestingly enough, they are both from Costa Rica, and Fayez was Miguel's instructor, undergraduate instructor at the university there. And they reconnected here, and they both opted to participate in a writing group with us. So as successful as these groups have been and continue to be, what I was experiencing was some still a lack of satisfaction from some of the students I was working with, and primarily from the women of color students. So students of color continue to express this need for something more. And in conversation, that was expressed as a need for a space where academic writing and lived experience meet, are acknowledged, and are addressed. So it was great that they were able to participate in a group that helped them to develop the fundamental basic writing skills. So they were learning about grammar. They were gaining a better sense of organization. They were starting to identify patterns in their own writing, and yet they still felt like there was something missing from their writing experience. They were still expressing challenges and difficulties from outside of the writing group that were affecting their writing. And these are some of the things that were mentioned. Feelings of isolation. So for, again, looking at the numbers, remember that out of 10,000 students, only about 3,000 on our campus identify as people of color. For many students, they are the only people of color in their programs. A lack of institutional support. So although the university has a land-grant institution in a southwestern state and has Hispanic serving institute status, many students still experience a lack of institutional support, whether that is in funding or support within program for research ideas and for directions that they wish to pursue through their studies. A lack of faculty mentorship. The ratio of students of color to faculty of color continues to be imbalanced at the University of Arizona. But even then, there was still a feeling of a lack of presence and interest, but that many students were feeling from the faculty in their program. A lack of student services that are targeted specifically towards graduate students. As on many campuses, the focus is at the U of A has been primarily on the undergraduate student population, and that includes tutoring, mentoring, cultural centers. It wasn't until 2 years ago, I believe, that the University of Arizona developed a graduate student center, and it continues to grow. But again, that wasn't always available for students. And then also other challenges include perceptions of or actually being unprepared for rigors of graduate school. So many graduate students of color may perceive of themselves as underprepared to successfully complete the demands of their graduate programs, and specifically writing. Or there may be perceptions by others that they are unprepared. As a writing specialist, I can attest to that. I've had many students come to me with samples of writing that are certainly competitive, that they are advanced, and there are very few errors or concerns about their writing, and yet faculty has stressed to them that they need writing assistance. This is particularly true of students who are perceived to be multilingual. And then, of course, financial insecurity. And so many folks might wonder why financial insecurity would affect the writing experience of students, but financial insecurity is very traumatic and stressful. It limits the amount of time that folks have to focus on their writing, and it also limits their emotional and cognitive abilities oftentimes to focus on their writing. So those are some challenges that were also expressed by students who were telling me that they needed writing groups that could provide something more for them. And finally, the idea of safe spaces. Okay, so I just have here some quotes I'd like to share with you from research about race-based discrimination and concepts of safety for students of color on campus. And I'll compare those with this chart showing at the University of Arizona what those numbers look like. So here you can see, again, graduate student population, 10,000, people of color is just around 3,000. Faculty members, we have about 3,000 faculty members at the U of A, and just about 1,000 of those identify as people of color. And then finally, at the administrative level, and interestingly, the U of A categories the administrative level, the appointed level, and the classified level all together. We have about 10,000 staff members at the U of A. And of that number, almost 50% are identified as people of color. But again, that's 3 levels of staff. So at the U of A, the administration would include certainly the president, vice provost, associate deans of non-academic units. Appointed professionals often include service. So for example, my position, I am not a tenured faculty member. I am an appointed professional. And then classified professional are typically those folks who support the university as administrative assistants, some accounting, and then maintenance and custodial. Okay, so this is just some information from research to help us contextualize students' concerns about race-based discrimination. The first is from McCullough 2016. Race-based discrimination and racialized experiences impact academic and social success and contribute to student attrition. Most students of color experience racism in college from peers and faculty. Student organizations that are specifically for students of color and campus institutions such as college multicultural student centers can serve as safe spaces where students of color can socialize freely with others. Colleges and universities may thus promote the social integration of students of color by supporting these types of organizations and institutions. When people of color are together, there can be healing. We can reclaim parts of ourselves that have been repressed. We can redefine ourselves and support one another in embracing who we are. Okay, so from this information, it just affirms what many of us already know, that race-based discrimination is present on college campuses. This is a lived experience for students, for staff, for faculty, and it's coming at us from all levels. The things that help us to navigate through that racism as we go through our daily lives on campus include organizations and programs that are designed specifically for people of color. And the reason that that works for us is because it provides places for healing, so those safe spaces. It also provides spaces for growing and for networking and for building our resources to address those challenges that we may face. So our students are dealing with all of these issues. And in my experience working with graduate students of color, these are precisely the experiences that they are attempting to navigate. So in 2016, I decided to pilot a Women of Color Writing for Academic Success group. I wanted to address those needs that students were expressing to me and to see if we could help marry some of that healing and space with writing. So I proposed a 2-year program, and I was awarded a mini grant from the University of Arizona Commission on the Status of Women. I targeted incoming master's students, and the reason I did that is because most master's programs aim for a completion within a 2-year time span, and I knew that the funding could support that. I recruited self-identified women of color. So this was important for me because I wanted to recognize that not all people of color check those boxes on the forms. And so in the recruitment process, I did that is one of the stipulations I had. So what I offered was a facilitated writing group. This included peer review, writing time, and instruction, just like our other small groups. But this particular program also offered specific mentorship, resource support, and scaffolded meetings. And this is a picture of 4 of the members of the group. There were originally 5 members. So Liliana, Golea, Natalia, and Rochelle. Each of them graduated within 2.5 years from their programs. Frances, who was not pictured, did take a year-long medical absence, but she has returned to classes in spring 2020. Okay, so these new aspects of the writing group included mentorship. As a writing specialist with extensive experience in academia and industry, I could mentor them on the writing aspect. I am also a woman of color. I am a Mexicana, and I navigated the University of Arizona as a student and now as a staff member, and so those experiences were easily integrated into mentorship. And then the peer mentorship, we build a network of support within the group. Resource support, so I coordinated presentations for this group specifically. I also created a Google Drive community folder. So that folder included instructional material related to writing, but also information that is specific to women of color in higher education. And then our meetings, our scaffolded meetings included a check-in time. So the first 15, 20 minutes of our meeting time was always focused on greetings, on updates, on checking in with one another in any way that they needed to. So it didn't need to be specific to writing and academia, but any issue that they wanted to bring up. Then we would have the peer review. Instruction. I would have a topic to provide instruction for each meeting session, and then finally writing time. And I'm going to attempt to share with you here a short video clip from one of the members, Liliana, just providing her testimony on the significance of the group for her.
exact same troubles that I'm going through with academics. And I think that it's very important to have this type of community and be able to express your feelings, express your experiences, express your thoughts, because even though that we all have these unique situations, sometimes we find commonality, and there's something lost in that sometimes. But I also chose to join the Women of Color writing group because I find that I have trouble going from my my rough drafts to my final drafts, and I always question my methods and my writing style, putting in like my biases and my intentionality. And throughout this last year, being in this writing group has helped me immensely, because I'm allowed to share where I am, the progress of some assignments, get feedback, and work from that feedback. Um, in the first semester, we got together once a month, and then we changed that to twice a month, and now we're doing weekly. This third semester, we're doing weekly get-togethers, and I have found that my writing has changed, my goals, like how I'm goal-oriented, and my time management has changed, and even outside of writing skills, I have found that this group has helped me um, get through those like psychological obstacles. And I think that this type of group is very important when somebody of a minority is in these institutions. Um,
Okay. Um, so after the Women of Color writing group funding ended, I was still receiving requests for people of color and women of color groups. In fact, I was receiving more interest for women of color groups. For the in the initial um, in the initial recruitment process, I had over 20 students apply. The majority of them were actually doctoral students, so they didn't qualify for that program. But that showed me that there was an interest and a need in writing groups specifically for people of color. So in 2018, I applied for and received funding from our Office of Diversity and Inclusion to pilot 3 groups. One was for master's students, people of color, one was for doctoral students, people of color, and the third was for doctoral students, specifically women of color. And again, these were self-identified students of color. They could be at any stage of the writing process. And those writing groups would again include mentorship, resource support, and weekly meetings. And this is a testimony from one of the participants. What the WSIP People of Color Writing Group has done for me personally is create a cultural learning community that helps me feel belonging and capable. The group and the facilitator do this in an environment that is welcoming. This would be considered a culturally responsive practice, which is one of the objectives the University of Arizona is trying to meet under its new Hispanic Serving Institute status. These particular groups were only funded to meet weekly for a year. Once that funding ended, we gave the groups the option of disbanding or continuing to meet biweekly, and all of the groups have done that. This question of funding is really significant for us. Again, we're a small program. We don't receive student fees. We are not, it's not within our budget to offer graduate student services on a weekly basis. But what we can offer for free for students are those bi-weekly tutoring sessions. And so what we found is that that was a key component to the sustainability. So so that there would be no cost to students, we could offer it for them for free every 2 weeks. And we could be flexible within that schedule. Student recruitment is really significant. What I've also learned is that many of our students come to us on the recommendation of students who have participated in the groups. So for example, this group, in this picture, Gia, Joanna, Susanna, and myself, On the day that Susanna was awarded a fellowship and a separate research grant, Joanna received a conference scholarship, and Gia announced that she has been hired for her dream job. Mandy, who is not pictured, was absent to be interviewed on a national radio program. And this particular group, when it started, included only Joanna and Susanna. And they have effectively brought in 3 different members. They've rotated in members as members have graduated. They've recruited others. And so that has made the group sustainable. Both Joanna and Susanna are now looking at their last years in their programs. And so the newest members will be responsible for keeping the group going. The groups are showing a significant development of the students as scholarly writers and collaborators. For example, this particular group, Lisa, Gloria, and Alejandra, they've been working together with me for 2 years, and they are from different academic disciplines. Lisa is an anthropology student, Gloria is in gender and women's studies, and Alejandra is in rhetoric and composition. They recently submitted a proposal and have been accepted to write a chapter for um, Amplified Voices, Intersecting Identities, First Generation PhDs Navigating Institutional Power, edited by Jay Sablon and Jane Van Gallen. Their chapter is titled Smile Now, Cry Later, Navigating Structures of Inequality in Academia Through Resistance, Resilience, and Humor in our Women of Color Writing Group. And in this group, they explore how their experiences of women of color in higher education have intersected and what participating in the writing group has meant for their successes. So that level of collaboration is something that is across the board with many of our writing groups. Students have co-presented on various topics at conferences. They travel together to different locations for academic purposes. And most of the groups are cross-disciplinary. So let me show you the next group. This particular group, Tiffany is in higher education. No, Tiffany is in educational leadership. Viola is in higher education. Annabelle is in history. And Alexandria is in family studies and human development. And yet they have collaborated on projects. And this group in particular also meets outside of our writing group. They have their own writing sessions, and they have built a network of resource support. They encourage one another to apply to scholarships, even if they're all applying to the same scholarship. They seek out resources for one another, and they've built a relationship that I think will last well beyond their graduate school experience. Part of that is hinged on just being there for one another. And in that sense, they've built a community. This particular picture was taken the morning that Tiffany practiced her dissertation defense for the group. And then she successfully defended the next day. Yes, there have been numerous challenges to facilitate these groups and to keep them running. The primary one has been funding. So again, for graduate students, we only offer 2 free meetings monthly. So in order to increase those meetings for the groups, we've had to seek additional funding. And then recruiting specific populations is challenging because we have to be careful not to have an appearance of discriminatory practices, and because we want to be able to recruit the populations based on their needs. So I don't assume that students of color need writing groups. I have to understand what students of color are saying about their needs and recruit based on those and develop programs that can meet them. The other challenge that we have is infrastructure. Again, we're a very small staff, so that limits the number of groups we're able to facilitate. The staff demographics is a significant issue. I am the only person of color and the only woman of color at this staff. This corresponds with research that tells us that the majority of staff members at writing centers in general are white. Um, this means that the mentorship, the shared experiences, the sense of community may be more difficult and challenging to build when the facilitating tutor is not a person of color, but working specifically with people of color. That also means that the staff training is crucial. And again, that typically falls on me. And so that is a difficult process as well, helping to prepare the faculty to work with diverse communities and to prioritize the group over what they think the group needs. But of course, the benefits outweigh the challenges. For the students, we've seen a development of community, as I mentioned, those sustainable groups and those networks of support. And then we've seen the individual development as scholars, students who are able to achieve their personal writing goals and make progress toward or actually complete their degrees. I think it's been beneficial for our program as well. You know, referencing that the scholarship that tells us that the majority of staff members at writing centers are white. I think that having and pushing through to facilitate the writing groups for people of color in particular has helped to make our staff members aware of the specific challenges that students of color are facing on our campus and what they are seeking from us um, as support services. The other thing I would note is that we are the only program on our campus to offer writing groups specifically for people of color and to do those in a sustainable way. So I want to come back to these questions that I asked you about at the beginning. What do you think are the most important things to provide in a tutoring or writing group? I think what I found is that academic support that is culturally responsive. What do you think many students of color are seeking? Academic support that is culturally responsive. What makes a tutoring or a writing group a safe space for most students? Addressing what students are seeking. And how do we define safe in this context? So this is the new question. I would say spaces that allow students to grow academically, to acknowledge their lived experiences in the institution as contributing to that growth, and provide place for resources and support. And so if you think that you're ready to join or to launch a writing group, I would encourage you to think about the following issues. First, what is the interest and need beyond your own? Okay, so what are graduate students on your campus expressing, and beyond what you as a faculty member or a director of a faculty program might think, or a director of a graduate program might think, what is it that students are actually looking for? And you can ascertain those interests and needs through various means. You can do a survey, you can do an informal conversation, a poll, you could do study groups, just to get a sense of what students are seeking. You should be aware of the graduate writing support services already existing on your campus, if there are any. Where do students go for writing support, and what does that writing support look like? Can you work with those centers, if they exist? Can you work with those centers to help build a program to meet the needs of your students? And what are you doing within your own academic program? would it be better to actually house the writing groups in your program? And what does that mean in terms of finding someone to facilitate it? If you're a faculty member, are you the ideal person for that? Or is there someone else in your program that would be? And then finally, funding. Um, in order to make this feasible for you, do you need additional funding? You can look towards your graduate college. There may be funds available for that. Oops. And certainly to diversity and equity and inclusion programs. Okay, so that is all that I have for you today. But I welcome any questions or comments that you might have for me. You can reach me by email or by phone. My email is ahholm@email, oops, email.arizona.edu. And the phone number is 520-621-5849. And there is one more slide on this PowerPoint, just so you know. There are a number of resources offered here about writing groups, graduate students, and people of color in academia. So thank you very much, and take care.